Hey people, time to talk about the Resident Evil movies, but I need to put two disclaimers out to you. One, I bet as this goes along, I'm going to be talking about more negatives than positives, and I haven't played any of the video games, so these are just straight horror with a bit of sci fi movies, if you ask me, okay? I just want to make that distinction. So, jumping into the first Resident Evil movie, even though I've watched this movie a decent amount of times over the years, because that's the only one I watched prior to doing my marathon of these, I was really impressed by how easy it was for me to rewatch it because it carried this tense atmosphere, that you've got that race against time to bring down the evil computer slash corporation, and then you've got a bunch of zombies in your way, even though I don't know if zombies is the right term for it because they're infected with the T virus, so I don't know if really zombies is the best term, but what the term is there, right? And even though this movie doesn't explain what happens to Alice, I knew that this was the first of a long series of movies that would all end up having cliffhangers, which is one reason why I never watched past the first one, so that way I could get the entire story without having to deal with another cliffhanger. But because I knew that there'd be other movies, I'm like, okay, I'm not too picky that Alice doesn't have too much of herself explained. I bet I'm going to learn more about her and what the heck is going on as this series goes along. And I also noticed a few tiny things on this rewatch, tiny little moments between all the other characters. Like, I was finally able to remember that other person who wakes up with amnesia at the start of this movie was named Spence. And I also remember the line of, when Matt is taken away from Alice at the end of the movie, that they're going to introduce him into the Nemesis program, which comes into play in the next movie. Yeah. Even though I've watched this movie several times before, it was great to go back and check it out again. Now, it doesn't merit too many re-watches, in recent times, but if you really space it out, I think it's fine. I agree that the characters of, the special ops teams are one dimensional. You can actually argue just about everybody it's one dimensional, but I'm honestly not too bothered by it due to the fast pacedness of this movie, It was fun for me to go back and see it again. So, 4 out of 5, even though there is a part of me that thinks it's odd, because, this is pretty much just a B movie. To rate it that high, yeah, but that's what I feel like giving it, because I can't really complain about too much, except for the CGI of that creature that scars Matt, like right at the end of the movie, but that seems like, honestly, a really minor gripe, yeah. Now, moving into Apocalypse, I felt that this was a very excellent part too, because even though it takes place in a totally different setting, and yes, it does feel different than the first one, it still felt pretty close to the first one, because once we get our characters set up, because it took me a little bit to figure out, okay, this character's going to be important, this character will be important, because LJ, I thought they were just going to write him off after that very first scene, and then Carlos. I wasn't expecting him to, matter. I just thought that they were just cutting to a couple of random people without really much reason. I should have, realized they wouldn't be spending this much time with someone unless they matter somehow, yeah. And also how the Umbrella Corporation got a little bit personified here with that character of Dr. Isaacs, along with the professor in the wheelchair, I forget his name, and then his daughter. Yeah. Just got a bunch of different characters, and they were able to work some pretty good magic together there. And I also like how there were a few funny moments in there that didn't really sort of attract from the intenseness of the movie, and then all the fighting scenes, even though there was more in this movie than the previous one, I felt that they were a lot of fun. Sure, there was a little bit of over the topness, such as when Alice is abseiling down the side of that building towards the end where they're getting ready to steal the helicopter, and then a couple of other small little bits, but it didn't really detract from the movie there, and I liked how they brought Matt back, albeit, in that Nemesis form, and even though this really doesn't deserve a pat on my back or anything, I was actually able to figure out that, Matt was Matt long before Alice did, because, I had caught that Nemesis line at the end of the first movie, which goes to show how important the continuity is in here, even though I will be mentioning how they screw that up later, let me tell you. There were a couple of things that I felt dropped it from the first one, because it took me a little longer to figure out, we need to focus on this character and that character, and it did feel a little longer than the first one, even though I'm pretty sure the runtime was almost exactly the same. And then the cliffhanger, I just find it really tough to believe, that, like, after they, all of them get arrested, and then all of a sudden, Jill, LJ, and Carlos are suddenly, employees of the Umbrella Corporation and can escort Alice right out of the jurisdiction. I mean, like, sure, Dr. Isaacs let them go, but just that simple? And then just after that, you would shoot them down in the helicopter, unless... Oh, no, they shoot them down in the helicopter beforehand, right? The ending of that movie, it was, kind of confusing to me, in case you haven't noticed. Right, and also, like, what happened to the kid, Like, what happened to her? No explanation for that is given, as far as I can tell. Not even on the wiki, at least I think I checked her. Maybe I was thinking of Becky. I don't know. But... yeah, that ending was kind of confusing, and then for what it promised in Extinction, yeah. Okay. So, it was pretty close to the first one, but it's definitely a little dip down from the first one. So, critique, I'll go 4. Personally, I'll go 3, just to make sure there is a lower distinction between them, right? Now, moving on to Extinction. This was a mixed bag, because there was a decent amount of stuff that I liked about it, but there were some things that stood out to me as, ooh, not so good, because, like, I do like the fact that it had turned into, for lack of a better term, even though this was made before The Walking Dead, a Walking Dead kind of situation where you've got a bunch of people on the road trying to survive from all those zombies, and how they do various tricks, and how they've got a little bit of a desperate feel to them, even though they're, for the most part, all willing to act and fight against them, the zombies. Yeah. I really did like that feel, and then the fight scenes in here, even though they were... how do I want to describe this? Bigger. It didn't feel like that big of a stretch from the second movie, although the idea of, that many crows showing up in one location? I mean, like, I'll buy, okay, that the crows can be infected, okay? And I do know that birds have, like, this instinct in them, or at least a few species of birds, that, they conjugate, I forget the exact term, in one area, and communicate to each other in that kind of a way, but that many of them? Yeah. So that bit got to me. And I was also impressed with what they ended up doing with the characters that they brought back from the last movie, LJ and Carlos, because I honestly hadn't expected that. I thought that we were just going to flat out have a new batch of characters, and we did get some new characters, with Claire, k-mart, and then the other people that were with them, but they were actually fun to watch. And I'm glad that we didn't have to have the confusion that Apocalypse had of we need to focus on these characters. It was, okay, here's all good guys right here, let's just throw all of those zombies at them, yeah. That was kind of fun, yeah. And even when they gradually started dying, I didn't really think that there were that many stupid deaths going on here. I mean, like, they're kind of sudden, but I wouldn't call them stupid because, there's a ton of zombies and a lot of actions going on here. And I like how a few characters were smart about it because, like, that person who was climbing the Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas is trying to help someone get higher up there, and he gets two zombies attached to him. He barks out to run, and then he hurls himself off the edge and takes both those zombies with him. Nice, real nice. And the end fight scene, that was pretty intense, even though I do have an issue with it that I'll bring up in a second. Yeah. So now moving into the things that I didn't like about this one. The idea that Alice all of a sudden has superpowers, I just do not like that. Now. You're going, well, you weren't complaining about her abilities in the first two. That's above normal. Super strength, not really a big deal, and being a little bit faster than other people. Honestly, that wasn't too big of a stretch, but force fields and a little bit of telekinesis or the ability to, like, stomp on the earth and then cause some disruption. I used to think she did something similar to that in this movie. That I just did not like. That was over the top. And then the idea of cloning in here just... I mean, like, they did make good use of it later on, but it just felt a little over the top. I mean, like, that might be a part of the video games, okay? It might be, but I don't know. I just felt that was kind of odd. And then, how the villain transfers into that supernatural being, even though that did make for an interesting fight, just... I felt like there were enough odd things going on in here to be... that it was getting close to being a bit much. It didn't completely cross over into that, but I had begun to think that it would, yeah. And then also, I did mention that I liked what this movie did with bringing back the characters from the last movie, but here's the problem. This movie didn't line up with the cliffhanger at the end of the last one very well, because it seemed like Dr. Isaacs was planning to have Alice, do something against the other people, and it seemed like she figured it out at some point that they had control over her, and then she left them in Detroit, but that line of dialogue happened pretty quickly. And then also, what the heck happened with Jill? They just wrote her off. Now, in real life, there is an explanation because the actress that played her was busy filming the movie Aragon. Why did you do that? Just, come on. But, yeah, what I'm just getting at here is that if they had structured that dialogue scene a little bit better, we wouldn't have this little bit of contention, about the last movie not really lining up with this one. Like, seriously, if you had just spent 20 more seconds focusing on that and adding a couple lines of dialogue, they could have resolved it just like that. And they half resolve it as it is, but it would have been that simple, because I looked at, the table of director, producer, executive, and writer on here. Really, the only thing that changes is that Paul W.S. Anderson didn't direct Apocalypse and this one, Extinction. So, yeah, if it's pretty much the same crew from every movie, and it literally was the exact same crew for the other movies that I haven't discussed yet, why couldn't you have just solved that issue? Huh? I know it's a B movie, but you only had to make the movie like 25 seconds longer. That's it. 25 seconds to solve one issue would not have killed anybody. If anything, it would have helped you out, yeah. So, enjoyable, but those errors, did kind of get to me on here. So, Gonna go 3 out of 5. It wasn't bad, it was just the bad stuff simply stood out to me, and it felt odd, like you know that I shouldn't be complaining about this, and yet I am. We're up to 15 minutes. I'll break this into 2 parts.